I am live. I'm reading Vague Vacation. It is a book by Joan Marshall Grant. This is chapter 18, Whisky and Water. She describes a journey with her then husband Charles in 1946. This was published 1947. Joan was known for her far memory books. She used to be able to recall 3 previous lives, 7 of them. But this is a journey through France. Whisky and Water, chapter 18. Jacotte's knee had lost all apparent sepsis in less than 24 hours. So between rejoicing for penicillin and regret that we had to leave them, the Blancs brought out a bottle of their best champagne at 10 o'clock in the morning. We decided to go through Bourg when Charles naturally wanted to collect the week's petrol coupons from the same bureau, and then by Pont-d'Ain, which the Blanc told us was the best route to Geneva. After the lanes round Thoissey, with their shallow, reedy lakes and cobs of orange-red maize festooned on the farmhouses, it was exciting to know we should soon be among mountains. We lunched early in Bourg, and by 2 o'clock were beyond Poussin, and climbing steeply several times we stopped to appreciate a view which was too remarkable to share attention with the hairpin corners. Even the highest ground was neither misted nor chill, and a brief rainstorm did no more than exercise the windscreen wipers for the only time between Le Touquet and our return to Paris. Not being sure whether petrol was rationed in Switzerland, we filled the tank in Bellegarde, a dull little town with streets which are an uneasy compromise between French and Swiss. Soon after Very, we saw a concrete blockhouse which warned us we were nearing the frontier. Charles got out of the car with our papers and soon returned smiling broadly. They only wanted to know how much petrol we had. When I said the tank was nearly full, they seemed perfectly satisfied. The customs are certainly easier than they used to be. It seemed a little unnatural that there was no sign of a Swiss post, and a few kilometers further on, just after Saint-Julien, we came to the frontier. Here there was nothing superficial about the formalities, though there was no under-curiosity about the luggage, presumably because with the worst will in the world there is not much that the impoverished Englishman can buy abroad. To this, however, there was an exception on which we had not counted. Our precious cigarettes were declared to be in quantity over the limit. We should have to pay duty. That, we thought, would be easy enough, and Charles went over to the Bureau de Change with a 1,000-franc note, which we imagined would satisfy the duty several times over. However, we had to change a second meal, for we discovered another curiosity which appears beyond the comprehension of anyone unversed in the mysteries of high finance. An English pound for, or rather a fifth of a £5 traveller's cheque, was worth 476 French francs, or 17 Swiss francs. But 100 francs French was worth 1 franc Swiss. So the original pound, when changed first into French and then into Swiss, was worth under 5 instead of 17. As is obvious, the reverse process is highly beneficial, but as no one is allowed to take more than 4,000 francs out of Switzerland, gambling on the exchange is a limited amusement. Entering Geneva, we were confronted by a huge sign strung right across the roadway: Journée de la Femme, Hunger Day. So much for the fine stories that there are no shortages here, said Charles resignedly. We were to find several such signs, but though they were evidently a more or less permanent and doleful decoration for the teeming streets, there seemed little to suggest that they had any great significance. The entire population seemed intent on committing suicide by bicycle, which made driving a car unrestful until we learned to appreciate the fantastic skill of their riders. On one occasion we saw a car back into a bicycle which happened to be passing. The rider took a heavy fall, which I thought would at least have broken his arm. I expected the motorist to display alarm, but no, it was the cyclist who apologized, then wrenched his handlebars back into line and set off as though nothing had happened. It was rather late to invoke Petrol to take us to some remote inn of genius, so we reluctantly decided to go international and stay at the Beau Rivage overlooking the lake. Our bedroom faced the other way, west, towards the mountains. The sun was already dipping behind them, and they seemed so impregnable that I momentarily wondered how the car could have passed them with such ease. Yet our thoughts were too mundane to stay long at the skyline. The bath water was magnificently hot, and while Charles soaked in it and vainly tried to pop his ear, I went down to the desk, ostensibly to change currency, actually to find out about a specialist and to make an appointment before he had any opportunity for arguing. In both tasks I admirably succeeded and returned to take my turn in the bath. It is said, Charles remarked, leaning against the jamb of the bathroom door and studying me as I shaved my legs, that all the whisky we have not been able to get at home is here in Switzerland. It would be a pity not to verify the report. I could hardly agree more, I said, but if you please, there is a draft from the door, and I prefer not to have to choose between freezing to death and drowning by total immersion. As usual, he left the door open, and then lay down on the bed to get dry, making a series of disjointed observations to which I had no chance to reply without shouting. They were mostly about whisky, but some were of a personal nature, suggesting, among other things, that the obvious psychological etiology of his present disability was unwillingness to hear sarcastic remarks from his life partner, a diagnosis without foundation. Half an hour later we entered a bar, which at first sight surpassed even his hyperbolical vision. Ranged in glittering ranks were the strangers whose return would be most welcome now in the long winter. Johnny Walker, the Black Label and the Red, VAT 69, teaches Highland Cream, a name of poetry. There was John Jameson from Ireland, though not the Redbreast. There was even rye from Canada and bourbon from America, scattered among Hague and Duar, Spey Loyal and Long John. But I, who have lived in the Highlands, was glad to see none of the splendours of Scotland, the pure old pot-still whiskies, which are only for the people who made them and their bloodkin. Charles must have been thinking along the same lines. If an angel unaware should be chance your table share, I finished the question for him. You would not be wrong to give it tumblers of the real Glenlivet. Then we had some ordinary whisky and felt better for it, till we paid the price and realized that each cost over 4 shillings. No wonder the bar was full of full bottles. We went out into the young night, brilliant with powerful standards and shop windows. There was a restaurant sign ahead of us, and we turned in there because we could already see people dining on a balcony immediately above it. The place proved that Petrol had also passed the customs, though I would not say that anything except the elaborate and copious hors d'oeuvre was particularly interesting. From where we were sitting, the lighted banks of the huge lake closed gradually together to meet the first of many bridges which through the city span the infant Rhône. No trivial source this, no springs and streams gradually gathering force with each new fall of ground, but a surge of silent thrusting power as the funnel of the lake's end draws into itself the free depth of the vast expanse of Loch Lomond. After dinner we decided to walk, and went first to the longest bridge, which was almost opposite the restaurant. On one side of it the level inkiness seemed infinite along the water, and then, improbably hung like lanterns in a tree, shone the isolated house lights of high pastures. On the other side, the narrowing water was in absolute contrast to the natural dark and solitude which pressed against our backs. For in the centre of it was the palace of electricity, bright as a jewel, with floodlight and neon. Between the bridges the current was hardly yet perceptible, but we knew from the weir we had passed on the way into the town that soon the water raced. From bridge to bridge we followed the rising thrust of the black flow under the bright lights, until perhaps 4 bridges lower down the patent leather surface, which seemed so still, ripped up against the slightest obstruction in a flurry of spray. It was awe-inspiring, almost frightening. Charles must have felt the same, for he remarked, "What a place for murder." "Don't be so Irish," I retorted. "Better to think that this rushing darkness is the source of all the lights. They must have generators, surely." "Of course, but probably much further down, where the fall is even greater. I wonder how deep it is here." We peered over the stone balustrade, but there was no clue to the depth. Oh, that was the end of this chapter. The next chapter is Cynic and Samaritans. I'm wishing all a wonderful 28th of December.